Ben Woodruff here, out in the deserts of northern Utah. I'm out here in a pretty stark, bleak area. There's some rabbit brush, a little bit of sagebrush, some cheatgrass, and it's pretty desolate. There's not much out here. But it didn't always used to be that way. This area where I'm at right now used to be under Lake Bonneville. All around in this area, and I'll show in some video clips, there's beach lines of ancient Lake Bonneville, which is a lake that covered the bulk of the state of Utah during the Ice Age. But about 10,000 years ago, a natural dam broke in southern Idaho, and all of that lake emptied out, flattened southern Idaho, made its way to the Snake River, then to the Columbia River, and then to the Pacific Ocean. And suddenly, all of that dropping down left these huge valleys all across northern Utah. And these valleys, they filled up with grass and became grazing for things like woolly mammoths and American camels and American horses and zebras and buffalo, different species of bison of all kinds, and 14 different species of antelope. The antelope we had here were crazy. There was huge numbers of these species all around. And then things have changed in the past few thousand years to where we are today. But what we're looking at behind me is a giant piece of limestone that was an island. It was underwater. This was completely under Lake Bonneville. But then something happened. As the water level dropped, it became exposed. And it turns out this is not just ancient limestone, but there was also tuff all throughout this. Now what tuff is calcium carbonate deposition, usually from freshwater springs that occur underwater. So you have water bubbling up and it's depositing little bits of, just kind of like cave formations in reverse, depositing, and sometimes it makes columns, sometimes it makes formations that, I've got a piece that almost looks like coral, just the way through capillary action that it deposits calcium carbonate. And what you end up with in the end is sometimes amazing columns and pillars. In Mono Lake in California, when that lake was dropped, there are some famous pinnacles there that are world famous, and a lot of photographers like to go see them, but they were formed underwater, again through upward thrust capillary action of a freshwater spring. Well, this rock behind me is limestone, but underwater it also had hot and cold water springs bubbling up underneath it. It's formed all kinds of caves throughout this whole entire formation. We're gonna go take a look at one of these caves that as the Ice Age was ending, native peoples in this land would come here because there was a freshwater spring down below, which is a great place to get water. And then up above, you have a cave where you can stay, you can keep warm. So we're gonna go check out this cave up here. Already you can see just how flat and expansive this landscape is. And it's amazing and kind of humbling to think, if you go back just a few thousand years ago, right now, I'd be under over 1,000 feet of water. It's a marine environment where you had fish and turtles and all kinds of animals, sturgeon fish, sucker fish, and Bonneville cutthroat trout, all kinds of these animals lived in this water, and now it's a desert just a few thousand years later. So things can rapidly change. One of the favorite pastimes in the American West is target shooting and shooting clay pigeons, which are these right here. But unfortunately, in this area, a lot of people have left a lot of trash. And if you target shoot, there's nothing wrong with shooting targets, but you should always clean up your mess so that other people don't have to deal with it and they can enjoy the wilderness just like you want to. Well, from up here, you would never guess that this landscape is the story of water. Pretty high up, getting some height, but you can see in the distance, let me move the camera so you can get a better view here. Out there, you can see some water. There's a freshwater spring that feeds out, and it has no outlet, so you can see that skiff of water. There's deer and antelope and cattle that go out there and drink. But again, this whole area was under 1,000 feet of water, and now it's desert, and these springs used to feed up under the water, and now they just bubble up on dry land and wherever they are, there's a nice little spring. We're going to take a look at some more springs as we travel around this area. All right, I have here a piece of tufa. Now, I may have said things wrong. I always mix these up. Tuff is a volcanic rock. Tufa is a calcium carbonate deposition made from freshwater springs. So this piece of tufa right here, again, it almost just looks like cement. And again, like I said earlier, some of these pieces you find, depending on how dense the capillary action is, these can literally form and look like coral, which is pretty wild. But it's all over up here, and it just seeped in through the limestone. So when this landscape was underwater, the freshwater spring inside of this seeped through and had a lot of pressure, and wherever it would seep through, it would leave minerals in the form of this calcium carbonate formation. So maybe we'll find some interesting shapes. This is pretty cut and dry, but we'll see what else we can find up here. Almost up to the cave. It looks like we got a raven nest there. You can see the little bit of rope or yellow string sticking down. It's probably from baling bales of hay, but you see the sticks in there. You can see it's a raven nest. Gotta say, that's a pretty commanding view for a nest. See, way down below there's some cattle grazing, and you can see that water. There's a freshwater spring, and you can see they put in some hardware there to try to make a guzzler, make it more accessible for the cattle. But again, that's bubbling up from the ground, which is one of the many springs in the area in what is otherwise a pretty desolate landscape. All right, I'm up here at the cave now. And again, a very commanding view. And so the cave is back behind me. And we'll go in there in a second. But out front, there's a lot of droppings. And there's a lot of bones. These are modern bones, these aren't artifacts. They look like rodent bones. And also, some of these look like rabbit. Part of a pelvis there. Some more over here. So, something hunts or scavenges up here. Now, I'm gonna go take a look up there, but I'm wagering that is barn owl. This cave gets frequented by people quite often. And so there's little bits of modern human stuff here. And I'm not even in the cave part, I'm in the cave above the cave, where it looks like there's some owls living here. So I've looked around, I want to show you a few things. Right out front, these are pellets. You can see jaw bones from large rodents, lagomorphs, vertebrae, pretty substantial. Now, there's more of it around, but if you look up above, you can just see the streaks of all the droppings all up in here, all down here. So there's something that spends a lot of time roosting in here or even living in here. Now I found there's some more bones. There's a jawbone right here. There's another jawbone right here. And right there is a feather that is unmistakably, oops, some focus there, unmistakably a great horned owl feather. Make that up, take a look at it there. It's a great horned owl, not a barn owl. Now, looking back up in here, let me zoom out a little. this cave seems like it kind of pretty much comes to an end, but actually, if you look up here, this goes on further. And I would wager that there are great horned owls nesting up there, probably right now. And you can see the streaks of poop. Hopefully, you can see that streaks coming down. So they nest in there and do their thing. And you know, when they need to fledge or need to go hunt, you can just fly on out. Let's go take a look at the actual cave. Still haven't left the little cave yet. Still want to go in the big cave, but I just noticed this. And if you can see this, I'm going to try to see if we can get this on camera. This is a pack rat midden or den. And you can see there's bits of bone, there's bits of, looks like fluff from a sheep, bits of yarn, bits of grass, and even bits of bones from larger rodents. They build this up and they make themselves a nest. But the crazy thing about this is right next to where the owls are. The owls are right up in that hole, right up in there. And sometimes this is a strategy we see often. We'll see songbirds nest right next to the nest of a falcon, and having a rodent nest right next to the nest of an owl. And keeping your friends close and your enemies closer is a strategy that seems to work sometimes. They can't sneak up on you if you can always see them and you're right next to them. All right, let's get down there. In front of the big cave, there's more of these pellets. You can see they have rabbit fur in them. So again, this is a great horned owl. You got bone and fur from rabbit. So this is a active and powerful hunter. And you got a water bottle right in the entrance. I love this cave. Has kind of a cool entrance. You have to do a bit of a scramble to go through there. And then once you're inside, doesn't go back too far, but you can see there's sort of some proto cave formations, little wannabe stalactites and stalagmites that have sort of formed, but they're not very well defined. And you can also see there's poop all over from owls, from great horned owls or barn owls, one of the two. But looking down below here, this is built up like at least 8, 9, 10 feet worth of sediment that is blown in, fallen in, or fallen from up above. So this is on top of a rich archaeological site. And I believe in the 1970s, there was a modern excavation. This site was documented, but it's never been properly examined. And the nice thing about caves is they preserve things. Caves are wonderful at preserving the past. Looks like there's another pack rat midden right here. There's one back there. He's got a piece of glass. I don't know if you can see the reflection of the glass bottle back there. You never know what a pack rat's going to find of value. But again, by leaving the site as it is, this is a really good thing. Checking out this cave is really cool. I haven't been here in years. And one of the neat things about caves is the caves, again, they preserve the past well. They're dry, they usually are fairly silty, and they're fairly cool, which prevents decomposition. And silt that just blows in and builds up in layers is really good at preserving the past. So if you ever go to a cave like this, whether or not it's ever had an archaeological excavation that's taken place there, anything you find in the cave, leave it be. Because those important sediments are vital to understanding anytime an archaeological dig does take place, so that we can understand what actually took place here. Another thing too, don't graffiti. Like, let people enjoy the cave. It's kind of sad, you know, that you walk into this cave and there's a water bottle sitting in it. So leave things be, keep it clean so other people can enjoy it. But also one more thing, and this is why I'm going to be getting out of here. There's a concern when it comes to these dry desert caves with the hantavirus. It's a virus that is somehow connected to the droppings of rodents. And with as many pack rat rodents as I'm seeing pack rat middens in here, I'm gonna get out of here because I don't have a mask to block, and I don't want to get any respiratory diseases like that. So just remember, if you're going to go exploring desert caves, it is wise to have a mask that you can have to try to block that while you're looking around. But I'm gonna go out now and check out some of these other freshwater springs in the area and take a look around. Well, now that I'm out of the cave, I wanna get a quick drone shot just to give you a sense of how high up on the hill this is. But again, we're in our day, we are used to relative safety. We have heaters, we can warm our house, we can air condition our house. We have places where we can store our food in a refrigerator or a pantry. Back in the old days, you wanted water, you had to go all the way down and get it. But up here you had protection from predators and later on from other tribes. It was a good place to live. You could have fire and you'd have an outlook. If any predator or any enemy was coming, you have a good strategic outpost. So we're gonna take a drone shot so you can get a better sense of what it's like being up here. Only like a quarter of the way down, but still it was a scramble. You know, not too bad, but bad enough that I was watching my footing and balancing it. I can't imagine just like sending your kids down here, go down to the spring, go get some water. But you know, different times. You know, you think about in our day, you know, we have kids living right next to busy streets with roads going back and forth and cars that could hit you, and we just teach the kids, yeah, be careful. So same kind of thing. Back in the old days, people living in caves like this, there was always a danger, but you teach your kid how to understand that danger and how to live around it and how to scramble. Coming down off the mountain now, and here's a really good example of some of that tufa forming. Again, this is a calcium carbonate deposition, but you can see it's all pitted and has sort of a pattern to it, almost like coral. Back down on the bottom now. That was a good little climb up, and it was cool to see the cave and to see where the owls were living. I'm going to go now to see some of the other hot springs and cold springs in this valley. It runs north-south, and this whole valley, it's so desolate here, but it's riddled with all of these springs. And all these springs underground are connected to this rock formation right here. So let's go take a look at some of these. I like some of these because they're almost like gateways to the underworld. They have different mineral properties, so sometimes you get some really neat colors, just like in Yellowstone. So I'm gonna go see what I can track down. Can't see it very well, but what we got here is a rough-legged hawk. This is an Arctic species that migrates sometimes this far south for the winter. It's a really cool bird, and I haven't seen many of them the past few years, so it's kind of exciting to see. Oh, got spooked out by a car. Now behind me here, this is kind of in between those hot springs that I'm heading to and the big old cliffs that we were just at. And it's kind of an odd thing here. What we got here is a solar array. It's a big old huge solar farm. These are starting to pop all over the American West. And it seems good, it seems like progress. But here's the thing, humans have a long history of screwing things up in trying to do things right. So in medieval times, we cut down all the forests because we needed the firewood. And it's like, oh geez, we're running out of wood, we're running out of forests. Can't have that, okay, well let's switch to coal. They started digging up coal, which brought on the Industrial Revolution. Yay, coal, hey, we don't have to cut down trees. But then it turns out burning coal is way worse than burning trees. It puts out more carbon and pollution. It's bad for our lungs. It's a very dirty form of burning. And then it's like, okay, well now, let's do things like we're doing things like solar farms and windmills. And it turns out, oh, the windmills end up killing all these birds. And solar farms, that sounds good, right? That's harmless. But the thing is, putting up a solar panel, no big deal. But putting up a big swath like this has decimated the prairie falcons in the north end of this valley here, because what happens is prairie falcons, they're a big open country bird, and they're going to chase mostly horned larks. Horned larks, they get up and they go, and they just chase, and they go after them and catch them. It's not like a red-tailed hawk. A red-tailed hawk will just sit around and then dump down and just catch a rodent. Horned larks, they live in this open country. That's where prairie falcons hunt them. Well, now that these solar farms are popping up all over the American West, the horned larks are realizing, hey, this is a great place to hide. We'll just go and eat bugs and grasses and sedges underneath these things. And if a prairie falcon comes out, we just hide under them. So it makes them absolutely impossible for a prairie falcon to navigate and hunt through these kind of environments. So it's yet another example where, okay, you're doing some clean form of energy, but you're also still impacting a life form. So no matter what, I don't know that there is a perfect form of energy, and humans are addicted to energy. So hopefully we just keep getting better and better at what we do. But no matter what, there has not been a perfect solution yet. Every time we come up with something that we think, hey, we got a good form of energy going, and then it turns out there's a side effect just like this. So, but let's keep on going. We're gonna go take a look at those hot springs. Now I'm out here at some hot springs, and there's mosquitoes buzzing around me, and it's the beginning of February. There's snow in the mountains. It's below freezing at night. Why are there mosquitoes here? It's because of the hot springs. Now, right behind me is another spring that is being used for irrigation that comes from further to the south. But it's still all connected, and all the springs in this area are all interconnected with the big old huge cave formation that I was at earlier. And you can see it to the north of here. But what's really neat about these springs are that they, again, are a gateway to the underworld, and they have really cool mineral content, but also they're kind of like an island in reverse for very sensitive species. So again, remember, this used to be Lake Bonneville. Just a few thousand years ago, I would be under 1,000 feet of water right now. But what's happened is as that all disappeared, anywhere where you had a spring ended up being a little oasis of water for the fish that were in the lake. So there's a lot of different species, but one in particular that we can find at this spring is a fish that's really cool with a really stupid name, and that is the least chub. Who got to name this fish? I don't know. It deserves a better name. But the least chub is highly endangered and can be found here, and similarly in little tiny pockets and little ponds all around Utah, where as Lake Bonneville receded, they found themselves trapped in these little environments, and they're still there. Now, this is very similar to what you have in Death Valley, California, where Death Valley used to be completely covered with a giant body of water as well. And same thing at the end of the Ice Age, as that all kind of dissipated out, anywhere you had a little tiny cave with a freshwater spring bubbling out, then you had fish there. So in the case of Death Valley, they have a much better name for their fish, and that's the Death Valley pupfish. So I think the least chub should be called the least pupfish or something like that. Something better. But still, it's amazing that there's these tiny little echoes left over from the Ice Age when this used to be just a vast, vast body of water, almost unfathomably large, like as big as the Great Lakes or bigger. And being that big and being able to have wildlife, and then to have in just a space of a few thousand years, which is geologically the blink of an eye, it's gone. Anywhere you have water is the only place you're going to find fish left from those species. So it's interesting, here in the Wasatch Mountains of northern Utah, we have a fish called the Bonneville trout, and they'll go down into our lakes and they'll swim upriver to spawn. But on the other side of the Great Basin, on the other side, the other beach of the giant lake that used to be here, Lake Bonneville, is some mountains called the Deep Creek Mountains, and also in the Great Basin National Park, barely in Nevada, those mountains as well, they also have cutthroat trout there. And they swim upriver, but when they go back down, there's no lake to go to. They're just stuck in a river. They used to be in a lake as big as a state, and now they're just stuck going up and down a river that goes nowhere. It just goes to a dry desert down below. So it's amazing to see how quickly, comparatively quickly, a landscape can change and how quickly it can shift for the animals that are in it. But I hope you enjoyed kind of going on this little adventure. It was last minute, but I thought it'd be kind of fun to take you along. If you haven't already, if you could hit subscribe, and as always, happy hawking.